Good afternoon and welcome to 12 Points webinar series, where today we're talking about from allowance to independence, raising financially fit kids. We're happy to welcome you here today and join us for this 30-minute section on how to help you raise these financially fit kids. Our first slide here is just our important disclosures. I want to make sure that you know that you can always find our disclosures on our website at 12pointswealth.com. Another good tool on our website is that this recording, you'll also receive it via email after the recording is ready if you've registered for this webinar, but they can also be found on our website under the webinars. And in addition to that, we have a number of webinars that we host on a monthly basis. Some for our general clients and public, but also others for the Center for Women. And those are all recorded. So take a look at our website, sign up for a webinar that might fit your needs, or take a look back at past webinars that might be of interest to you. Our hosts today, so myself, Tracy Harford, and Deb Cardiser. I will introduce myself. My name is Tracy Harford. I am a wealth advisor here at 12 Points. I love helping people define, discover, and live out their freedom. I work with many busy professionals and ones with families who are looking to gain clarity and confidence over their financial situation and really trying to understand where they are today and how can they get to some of the financial goals they've set for themselves in either for retirement or for other things that they have in mind. So I love being able to do that with my clients. Deb, I'd like you to introduce yourself as well.
Thanks. So I'm Deb Cardiser, and I focus on multi-generational families and wealth transfer. But what I'm really passionate about is a component of that is helping women and helping them to feel like they have financial mastery. And part of that is helping their children. So I find that lots of people ask about how to educate kids or how to find classes for them, and you are your child's best teacher. So empowering you to teach them is what we want to do here today.
And so today's agenda, we have a few things we're going to cover, but I think what's important here is that it's a starting tool. It's to give you some tips and advice and even some examples of how you might be able to help your kids, no matter what age they are. We'll go through why it matters. We'll go through each of the groupings we put together, which are 12 and under, our teens, and our young adults. And then we'll touch upon at the end some key takeaways and next steps that you could consider for you and your family going forward. And we will have hopefully time for questions. Feel free to put that in the question box on your screen and we will answer those at the end. If we don't have time to answer them all, you will hear from us post the webinar to respond to your questions. So thank you for joining us today. So why does this matter? Today isn't about raising kids who never make money from mistakes. It's about raising kids who know how to recover from those mistakes. So we know that most money habits are formed early and often without us even realizing. Again, we want to make sure parents know you don't need to be a financial expert to raise financially capable kids. We've seen success in having small, consistent conversations, which matter more than the big lectures to your kids. So helping them build that confidence is really more important than having that financial perfection, which many people strive for and feel like they can't help their kids with. So, and we're going to help you today figure out what can you control versus what you don't really need to in this situation. So to kick us off, we'll hit our youngest kids, age 12 and under.
So this is really about making money familiar to kids. And that happens by talking about it, by having conversations, letting them in on how you think about money, how you work with money in your household expenses, and what you're doing to save. The more kids can hear this conversation and this language, the better, because they're learning through repetition and real life experiences. One of the things that we talk about a lot is teaching kids getting money and dividing it up into spend, save, and give. And for the younger kids, what I like to do is show them this in glass jars. So find your favorite glass jar, let them decorate it or use markers or whatever, put stickers on it. And if you're, for the really little ones, giving them cash can be meaningful. They can see it, they can count it. It can be something that they take and participate with. And so the spend, save, give is really a mentality. So teaching that and understanding that with any money that they give is important. And one component of that is an allowance, and showing them that Allowance is play money. So it's not necessarily tied to being a citizen of the family group. It's really about play money and practice money. And it can be tied to specific chores if you want it to. You can also set up chores that they can earn additional money for. So if they're saving for something in particular, you can pull out a chore list and talk about how much you'll pay them for each additional thing. But this isn't cleaning their room. It's more like doing things that will help you and help the household. So think about it in those terms. And really showing kids how to wait, how to not be impulsively spending money all the time, how to make choices because we don't have a limited supply, and then how do they recover from bad decisions that they've made, and let them make them. So they're going to learn through mistakes and recovery. Um, and really making sure that you're not judging what they're spending their money on. I mean, you and I don't spend money the same way. You and your kids don't value the same things. You're not going to spend money the same way. So try and keep judgment out of it. And really focusing on what would you do differently next time. So in terms of everyday conversations, you're going through the grocery store, your children are with you, talk to them about how you're comparison shopping. If you pick up the flyer, tell them what you're looking for. Maybe you're going to buy differently or spend money differently in the store because you can see what's a better value. You can see what's giving you more. So show them how you're doing it. You can walk through the grocery store with them, and that's really meaningful. And then saving for a toy versus impulse buys. So I think they're going to assign higher value to something that they saved for themselves rather than something that was just given to them and bought haphazardly in the store. So teaching them how to do that and saying no and telling them, they can use their allowance and saving towards a toy. And there's apps you can use for that are helpful, and we can get to that in a minute. And then birthday money conversations. So when the money comes in, if you can frame it up in terms of the spend, save, give components that you set up for them automatically, that's a great way to do it. But making a plan for that money. Maybe they're saving some of it and spending some of it. Maybe they've already got a plan for what they want to do with that birthday money. But have it be deliberate, not just I went out and I blew all my birthday money and I didn't even really think or consider what it was for. And then in terms of visual progress trackers, there are a lot of apps that are out there for really little kids. And a couple of them, I'm just going to rattle these off and you can get it in the replay later. But P2K is an app for kids who are 7 to 8 years old, and it's a budgeting tool. K-12 money starts in kindergarten and goes on up, and it helps them with money and math and analytical skills, which is really kind of cool. Allowance, I also really liked when I looked at it. It's trackable allowance and gifts and chores, so it can track all those things for you, and you can put extra chores in there. But if they're not seeing the actual money, having a tracker can really help with that. I know I don't always have cash available to give out for allowance, so having the tracker let them see that is valuable. And then Bankaroo is for kids 7 and up, and it's a wish list that they can set up and track. And then Chore Pay is a way also to have you set up chores that they can gain money for. So those are some really good charts that there are. And then in terms of sample money conversations, really it's talking about money should be easy. It shouldn't feel stressful, and it shouldn't only happen when they're asking for something. So, we can talk about when they want something right now, talking about how you can't buy everything that you want. Money's not limitless. So how can you make a plan? How can you decide what you're going to buy? What do you want to put on a birthday list? And making it more deliberate. So redirecting them instead of just saying no all the time is helpful and helps them start thinking differently about money. And then I love this one because they bought something and they saved for it and it wasn't great. They look at it a couple of days later and it's sort of halfway in the trash. So asking them what they would do differently or how they hoped it would turn out better next time gets them thinking about what works, what doesn't work. And we want to keep shame out of money. There's enough shame with money that comes naturally. So we want to make sure that it's not in your language as you talk to them. And then, talking about spending limits. this is really important to conversation to have with kids because it normalizes limits. You can't spend indiscriminately and neither can they. And if you can say no to them and normalize that, it's going to help quite a bit. But talking about money in terms of time is another way to make it relative to them. You know, you've got a half an hour before dinner. How are you going to spend that time? How do you want to spend the money that they have? And it isn't unlimited. So you're conditioning your kids and their behavior in these conversations. And also remember, they're listening to everything that you're saying when they're not, it isn't a conversation for them. So how are you conditioning them with your conversations about money or your reactions to money? So think about those kinds of things. And then introducing saving. I think, you know, if you go online and you Google retirement savings graphic earlier versus later or something along those lines, and you look at images, there are a ton of images that come up with saving earlier versus starting to save later. And I think it's really impactful, especially for littler kids, about why saving's important and what they can do about it and how it matters. So it gives them, think about it in terms of giving them freedom rather than restricting them by putting their money away. So talking about it in those terms can matter. And I've got my kids are 18 and 23, and my 18-year-old is talking about quickly setting up her Roth account so she can put her camp salary money into there. So, you know, they're thinking and they're learning and they're getting this from you. So make it matter.
Our next age group is where my child falls into. She's 14 years old, newly 14. So those teens, where we're helping them practice independence. So we know that our teens need hands-on practice managing money before adulthood. So we want budgeting to feel like a freedom and not a punishment. So we really want to help them understand how that works. And those first jobs are super powerful teaching tools. Deb just talked about a Roth IRA. Explaining to a kid, I had to explain to my child, she can't just put any money she saves into a Roth IRA. It has to be earned income. So helping them understand how they can save and which buckets they could save in and why is really helpful for them. It's not something I learned as a kid, so I'm thankful that I'm able to share that with my own daughter about the differences of these accounts. So, and these first jobs are powerful teaching tools. In a lot of them have irregular income. They may only work during summers or during breaks. So helping them budget and understand how to spread their earnings over a period of time so that they have that money to do the fun things that they hope to do in their plans. So the other thing that's important for teenagers is really normalizing mistakes, helping them understand how they can learn from those. And again, keep shame out of the mix. If they have an overdraft, I mean, if you're helping them set up a checking or a savings account, it's a great opportunity to introduce. And a lot of kids these days have those debit cards or those credit cards linked to those accounts. So getting them used to using that card with you kind of helping them through that process is really helpful. If they have overdrafts, they overspend, they make poor choices. It's really a great learning opportunity. And Deb shared a great slide that talked about how you might talk about to them about how they might make that choice differently next time. And those are really learning opportunities for these kids.
And Tracy, you mentioned overdrafts, and I think it's really important at this young age to let them feel the impact of their mistakes. So it's not punishing them, but you know they're going to feel it and remember it if the next time they get an allowance, you've deducted the overdraft amount from this month's, and letting them feel that is going to make an impact. And feeling it now versus when they're 25 makes a much bigger impact. So
I agree. I agree. That's a great injection there. So some key parent shifts, I think, when you're in this role with these teenagers, you're really moving from manager, which you were doing when they were much younger, to coaching, helping them learn and do things that are going to be beneficial to them. I think making sure we're focused on not judging them, understanding their decision-making process and how they might do things differently if they had another chance at it. Again, asking questions instead of giving solutions. Ask questions so it provokes them to think about how they might do something or how they might plan for something. And again, encouraging that planning before spending. I do this quite often with my daughter where she'll constantly ask for things and I say, put it on your birthday list, put it on your holiday list. And it's really asking them if there's stuff that's left over that they didn't get that they had hoped to, It's understanding like, what are you going to use your own money for? Are you going to save for that? Do you want to hold off? My kid is now thinking about a car. She's 14. And so in her mind, she's not spending her money because she wants to save for a car. So it starts to get them thinking about what's possible for them. There can be short-term goals, there can be long-term goals. It's really getting them to think about how they can use their money to meet some of the needs that they have in their life. And again, I think what I've realized with my own kid, when it's their own money, they're much more conservative with how they spend it. So they're not picking things off at the checkout aisle. They're going to save that money unless it's something they really, really want. So putting that in their control and helping coach them through that is really going to be beneficial. Some sample money conversations in this group is that first paycheck conversation. It's talking to them about this money has jobs. So what are you doing with this money when you get it? Are you spending it, saving it? What are you doing for your future you? And how do you want to divide it? My kid is also in this same mode where every time she gets birthday money, which just happened, she's like, I want to save 3/4 of it and 1/4% of it I can put and use for things that I want to do with my friends. So she's already very focused. She went from having only saving 1/4 of it to now she wants to save a lot more because she sees the opportunity in front of her. So giving them that ownership with a little bit of a gentle structure and push is going to be very beneficial for them to help make their own decisions and feel like they own that. Another sample money conversation is about budget pushback, and really explain to them budget isn't about control. It's about giving you freedom to decide where your money goes next and what you can use that money for. So again, helping them plan and think long term, sharing your own planning things and what you're saving for and what you're not going to spend money on because you're saving for this. So really aligning that budgeting with independence. But again, sharing your own money stories. What are you saving for? What are things that you are saying no to right now to help meet your goals? That's really going to help your child understand how they can save for themselves to meet those goals. Another one is when they overspend. It's again, not shaming them, but saying, I'm not upset. I'm just curious. Walk me through what you were thinking when you spent that. Or maybe, how would you do that differently now that you don't seem to be happy with that decision now? How would you do that differently next time? It really keeps that conversation with your kid open and not defensive. And they really are starting to think through, maybe I need to do this differently next time. And these conversations are really fun. I've had these with my daughter. It's really getting them to like think about it versus just kind of buying it and moving on to the next thing. When you start to ask these questions and become more curious, they become more curious about how they might have done it differently or will do it differently in the future. And again, talking about peer pressure. I mean, our kids all feel this today, and there's always someone that's got something or is buying something. And so it's bringing it back to centering values over comparison. Just because someone else is buying something doesn't mean it's worth your money, or reminding them of those long-term goals that they've really wanted to plan for and save for, and asking them, do you really want to shift that and move it to this item that you want to buy? And when I do this with my daughter, she starts to think in her head, like, what does she want more? And that starts to take it away from wanting to compare with somebody to what's really important to me. And I think that starts to put the control back on their side, and they feel more of that freedom with that decision.
So this is where I'm living my life now as a parent, and it's come with a lot of learning for me, not necessarily for them, but definitely for me. And I'll share some of that in a minute. But this is where we're really shifting from coaching to advising. So we're not telling them what to do all the time, but we're offering some advice. I still have to give prompts to my kids. My 23-year-old is not a W-2 employee. He's 1099. So I've told him when he has to pay quarterly estimates for his taxes. But I don't trust him to, well, trust is the wrong word. I don't rely on him to remember that, yes, this new quarter is coming up. He's got to make another payment. So I'll give him some advanced warning. So there's still some guardrails up for him at this point. And there are a lot of transitions taking place during this time frame. So you're going from high school, where things are pretty regulated, into college, where I made some mistakes with allowance, and then into being on their own. And I'll share my college story with you. So I think it's really important to teach them about boundaries, and if you're supporting them and helping them, so a college allowance My son wasn't working through college, and what I found was he kept running out of money, and I thought, oh no, my poor child, he's running out of money. Well, no matter how much I increased it, he would just spend it on DoorDash because it wasn't his money. So I will not make that same mistake the second time around. But I did let him run out. I did let him feel the impact of that. And he's got dining expenses. So we had to sit down and really talk about what the allowance was for, what it covered, what it didn't cover, and what he needed to use his own money for. And the allowance shifted dramatically. And I also paid him monthly. I didn't want them to run out and not feel the impact of it. Sometimes he ran out very quickly. And these were all really powerful learning lessons for him. So I think it's also important to understand is that your help is to encourage independence. If your help is just bailing them out and allowing them to remain without responsibility, it's not helping them. And you're teaching them to come to you with their hands out, and you don't want to do that. So really encouraging the ownership and the independence there is critical. And also teaching them about building credit. They're building their credit right now is really important. And that financial responsibility comes with a credit number, and it shows their worthiness for credit. So making sure that, they are using that as a building tool. Maybe they put gas on it and pay it off monthly. And I might give them reminders now and then to make sure that they're paying that off. But these are their responsibilities now, and they're having to take care of it themselves. So allowing them some leeway to make those mistakes has been helpful to me and in watching them. And then in terms of language for parents, showing them that you trust them is important. And I trust you to handle this means that you're capable of handling it. Whether or not they will is another story. So you might want to trust but verify. And, having them come up with the plans rather than spoon feeding it to them, they're beyond that at this stage. So letting them come up with the plans and asking them what their plans are, and just showing them that you're kind of hands off, and you've got guardrails, but the training wheels are off and they're balancing on their own and helping. So here in this area, just sharing mistakes that you've made with money is really important, and how you fixed it. And normalizing asking for help. So making sure that they feel comfortable coming to you, and you're not going to blow a gasket or yell or any of those things. And then being really careful yourself about whether or not you're enabling them with money and asking for money. So setting limits in advance. So if this is the last time you're going to bail them out, tell them that before they come to you with their hand out in some tricky situation that requires support. They're not going to get themselves into that situation if they know you're not giving them any additional money. So informing them before, showing them where the limits are, and really being clear about what the money is for that you are giving them is very important. And then some sample money conversations are just setting boundaries around help that we talked about. So letting them know what you're willing to help them with and what you won't help them with. And so this is going to help them build their independence. And you want to be really clear with them. You don't want them thinking they can come to you anytime they have a money request, because that's not how real life works. So we don't want to set those intentions now. And making sure that there's no guilt or tension, and walking away when you need to. So again, setting those things beforehand really matters. And then when they're making a costly mistake, letting them know that it's fixable is important. And then asking them first what should be done about it before you jump in with a solution. So helping them by encouraging their problem solvings and not rescuing them is really important. And they are likely to make mistakes. And then thinking about how you're not just going to bail it out with money, but allow them to, if they do require some cash infusion of some kind, making sure that it's paid back to you, making sure that you talk about a schedule for that, making sure that they know what your help is attached to is important. And then credit card conversations. There used to be credit cards on every college campus, giving them out to kids. And I watched a lot of friends get in trouble with this back in the day, and making sure that they understand that this isn't extra money. or a cushion that they just get to dip into whenever they want. But you've got to have a plan. If you're going to put a charge on that card, that they have actually have a plan for it. So making sure that they think about it in those terms and reframing it if you need to, if they're not getting it. But making sure also, I watched this happen to a couple of friends, that if you're going to bail out credit card problems, that there's a method to it, that you don't just give them money to pay off the credit cards. I had some friends who got that from their parents and it never made its way to the credit card company. So making sure that you're not creating problems with your solutions is important, and really instilling good habits and making sure that they have ways to repay the money, or they're already making a plan before they decide whether or not they're going to put that on a credit card. And then letting go of control. And this is very hard. And, trusting them to figure it out, and letting them know that you're available if they want to talk about it or walk through it, is letting them know that they are capable of doing it themselves. And the more that you've done this along the way, the better they're going to be able to handle the extra freedom. So just communicating that confidence and support, and supporting them where they do need it. So don't take off the training wheels if they're not paying their bills on time with their credit cards. Maybe a gentle reminder that it's the first of the month and that needs to happen. Those kinds of things, checking in on them, can be helpful. And then when money gets emotional, so this is the same thing for you and your significant other as it is with you and your kids. Walk away when things feel stressful or they get heated. Just being able to walk away from the conversation and coming back when you've had a chance to think about it, when you've had a chance to form an idea in your head of how you want to approach things. Always feel free to walk away, because money can be charged with so many things, and it's really comes from our families and how they deal with money. So think about how you're dealing with it now. And then modeling healthy behavior. We're not perfect with money either. So sharing some of those things that you're willing to share with them is important. Letting them know that you're saving for things. I love making things available to kids, saying, we could either go here, a smaller vacation, or we could do a bigger vacation, but fewer days, and letting them in on how you weigh those kinds of choices. And the behavior that you have with money matters so much to them. And then obviously looking things up. We have at our fingertips so much information, and letting them know when you don't have the answer, or let's ask AI, or let's Google the answer to this question, because probably there is an answer, or there is someone who's gone through it before. So helping them when you're solving the problems together can be really, really meaningful.
Our next slide and our final slide is to talk about some key takeaways and next steps that we think would be helpful for you today. So if you were to do one thing today, what could that be? So financially fit kids aren't perfect. We want them to be capable, and that's really the goal here. Progress does beat perfection in this situation. And success is going to look different at every age. We gave you some great examples of how you might approach each age group. There's some great tips and tools here, something that you can take one small action this week that will matter more than a full overhaul. So just pick one thing, don't try to do it all, but test them out. See how they work with the kids that are in your household or kids that you connect with. And really, again, it's model what you want your kids to learn. So having calm conversations, being flexible, holding people accountable, holding yourself accountable. Sharing those stories are really instrumental in teaching your kids. They learn from your experiences, and really understanding that your tone teaches as much as your words. So the way that you talk about money, the way that you feel about money, your kids will feel that. So really understanding that, and sharing those stories with your kids, because I think that will be impactful. Again, picking one tool or habit to introduce at home. Don't try to overhaul everything. It's going to be very difficult to do that and overwhelming, but test things out. Things are going to be different for every kid. So find out what works best for your kid. Deb has two kids. We talked about how they are similar, but also different in different ways. And I have only one, but I can tell you she's very different from the way I was at her age. So you're not going to expect every kid's going to respond in the same way. So we hope that we provided you some great tools to at least get that conversation started, to help your kids see what's ahead of them or how they can be more capable and more confident with money. And I think in the end result, it'll make us more confident when we know that our kids are also feeling that as well. And then our final slide is questions that you may have. So feel free to put those in the questions box if you have any questions you'd like for us to answer.
So there's a few questions in here. One asked about the resources, and we will make that available to you and afterwards. And then the next one was, what are the recommended percentages for savings, spending, and giving for kids? And this so depends on who you are, how much you're giving to your kid for allowance, how old they are. I think it's really more about the habit than the actual percentages. But you can use 10% for giving and split the other among savings and spending. But again, it's totally up to you. And as they get older, this savings can be increased just because they're capable of doing it. They can say no and postpone till later. So again, it's really up to you. And there are a lot of articles on this online that you can just look up and see what resonates with you. And then the other question is, what's a good age to start financial awareness with kids? I think this is a great question. Should it be based on their interest, maturity, or should it be started by the parent? And for me, this is start them as young as possible. Little kids who are 4 years old know the difference between less and more, and they can start valuing things. They can talk about their values. Well, I like this toy or that Barbie better than the other one. I want this. I don't want that as much. So they can start expressing those things. And I actually have a really good list of books for the really little kids to introduce money topics. And I can send that resource out um, to parents. But I think it's really the more you talk about it, the better. And it doesn't all have to be about money. It can be about saying no to yourself. It can be about postponing decisions, things like that. So they're all money concepts. They just may not be actual dollars and cents that you're talking about to the really little ones.
Yeah, I'll agree with that too, because I think even just the things that we say in our own heads to convince ourselves when we're making a money decision, speak that out loud. I do that quite a bit with my daughter, just so she can hear how I'm thinking through making a decision or not buying something in a store. Like, I want that, but I'm not going to buy that now. We don't really need to spend that money this month. That alone gets them thinking in that same way. And I wanted to go back to the question prior about what age and what money is in the give, spend, save buckets. Your kids will also start to change that. I think you start them with something that you think works when they're younger. But my daughter now, just this past week, we had this exact conversation about how much she was gonna save and how much she was going to spend and give in her buckets. And she put give in the same bucket. She thinks of giving as not giving to a nonprofit, but giving as in helping her friends buy a drink at Dunkin' Donuts or doing something with her friends as a way of giving and buying their meal or doing something for them. And to her, she's like, I'm gonna make that my kind of my spend, and my give bucket is in that same bucket with me and my friends, and then half of it's going to be saving. And so they start to form their own ideas of how they want to do that. So I think start with what you think works, but also be open to how your kids might adjust those numbers and those percentages along the way.
So another question is, do you have kids' financial literacy classes you can recommend? I don't. I've read a huge amount of number of books on this. And what it really comes down to, I think, is training yourself to teach them. Um, it's they're going to learn better from you than they do from outside, I think. Um, but we can look into that and see if there's anything that I can find out there to train parents. But I think it's really making the conversations normal, making them part of everyday life. The more you can do that, the more they're going to gobble up information, and you're already doing it. So remember that you have already, if you can balance your checkbook, if you can get your bills paid, if you can do the things that it takes to keep a household running, you're already doing the things you need to train your children on. So the more you can realize that and realize, oh yeah, I need to teach them this as we go along, the better off you're going to be. But I'll see what other books and online resources we can come up with for that one. And then the last one is As 529s have always been popular for kids, do you still recommend this, or do you see greater success with a normal different savings account for children? I think this is a great question. 529 plans are a way for money to grow tax-free for kids' higher education expenses. You can use some of it for private school and you can use it for college. And while that is a great resource and a great way to put money aside for college, and kids can have a contribution that they make towards that, it is really limited to college. So what we've been talking about here is really a way of kids controlling their own savings and being able to put it in an account that they have access to, that they can get out when they want, and start to be able to make those choices and those decisions and practicing for themselves. You can't really do that with a 529. While we love them for college savings, it's not a great teaching tool for kids. So they have their value, but maybe not necessarily in the context that we've been talking about here. And then in terms of other savings accounts for children, if you open up a uniform gifts to minors account, so before your child is 18, they can't really own their own account or own investment account. They can have a savings account at a certain age, but those accounts get handed over to the child when they turn 18. So if you are saving for your child, I may not recommend that you put it in that kind of vehicle. It may be better to save in a 529 or in something that you maintain control of so that your child doesn't automatically get it when they turn 18. So just a way of thinking about the larger savings vehicles and what they mean. And also children who have large savings in their own name may disqualify themselves to more financial aid from colleges. So kids that own resources in their own name, it's counted at a higher percentage than if you own something in your name that's saved on behalf of your child. So things to think about. It's a little more complicated than just, I'll sock this money aside. And if you have more questions, that specifically, feel free to ask Tracy or me by connecting with us by email.
And I think that will wrap up our webinar today. Again, we will share these slides and you will get a copy of this recording if you're on this call or registered for this call. You will receive an email once that is ready for you, and we will also work on a follow-up to provide some additional resources for those that have asked. But again, thank you for joining us today. If there are additional questions that we didn't get to today, please feel free to email myself or Deb or reach out at 12pointswealth.com and we're happy to help. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
We missed one of the questions.